I had a really fun show today, and it got me thinking. We talked about intellectual health and history, and I think obviously when the topic was created, we thought about history books and studying history, studying maybe ancient civilizations, ancient dictators or rulers, or the Romans, democracy, where it came from. I don't know. We just intellectual health and history, and it's so much fun because you never ever know where it's going to go. So the episode ended up kind of going way towards more your personal history, your family history, and less about events and rules and rulers and empires and all that kind of stuff that I originally kind of had a preconceived notion about it. But that's why the beauty of it is I never talk to the guests, I never know the guests, so I just kind of let it go how it goes. And we talked a lot about your history, family history. Have a sweet daily challenge. You have to write down something you achieved yesterday, within the last month, and within the last year, every day for the next 7 days. It's going to be pretty awesome. Kind of a self affirmation. Make sure that you know what you're doing and whatnot. I mean, all you'll have, everyone has achievements, whether it's making sure to brush your teeth twice a day, or making sure that you compliment 5 people. Whatever your achievement is to build your life, you get to choose it. That's the beautiful part. But history, your history. It turned out all three of them were authors. So maybe there was a little bit of a bias there just by the topic of history. And then we talked about personal history and family history. And, one of our guests talked about how his father was, I guess how to put it, I don't know, but my father kind of seems to struggle with that too. He not a good enough father, didn't do this, didn't do that. And it's like, history. Did you give us children, me and my brothers, a better opportunity than you had? And the answer is yes. And, I'm looking at my brother, who's now a father as well. He's got a 4-year-old. And it's kind of interesting to see, and that kid has way more opportunity than we ever had. They live in, they're going to be living in a big old house with a lake right a lakefront. He's been to the lake. He swims, he kayaks, he has all this stuff at his doorstep. So now it's like my turn. Whenever I end up falling in love and getting married and having a kid, I got to make sure that they have a better opportunity. And I mean, hopefully, I live on this sweet island and they're snorkeling and beaching every day, and I would consider that a better opportunity to have that in your backyard and this view that we look at and watch the cruise ships and all the business opportunities down here and all that stuff. So, hopefully someday I'll find someone. But history, your own personal history and your family history. And they were all ended up being authors. I think one of them had written like 7 or 8 books and had been a part of like 20 more. It's super interesting to think about your own history. You get to tell it, right? We also talked about, the winner gets to tell the history, So, World War II, if you go to Germany or Japan, what they learn is actually pretty different than what we learn in America. And it's interesting, there's factual history. Is there actually a fact in any history? Is anything a fact other than maybe dates, maybe numbers? I don't even know. I think numbers of lost soldiers is different on the losing side versus the winning side. And when you learn, as much as I travel and meet all these people all around the world, especially with my show, but even just in general, what spurred the show was me traveling and seeing that all these people growing up in different places have vastly different intellect, vastly different thoughts, cultures, and assumptions, right? You go to the Middle East, you go to Asia, and they're like, this is how life is. Oh, no, this is how that happened. They're like, that's definitely not what I've grown up my entire life learning about that event. And they're like, yeah, this is what we heard. And you go, wow, your education system and our education system on history is very, very different and very, very interesting. Even just, living in Italy and Mexico, even just visiting for more than, a couple of days when you meet some of the locals. And if you ever have an in-depth conversation, you'll learn that the world is not what you read in your history books in school. And there's a lot more gray area to it. And there probably does not exist an actual truth. Any event is going to have some bias. It's going to have observation. And there's not really anyone that's going to be there reporting without any bias. And if so, is that broadcasted to where you can consume that actual knowledge? I don't know. We talked about it. And but we don't know either. Maybe you do. Maybe send a reply to an event that actually, I'm sure there's facts in events, like what day something happened. Historical figures' birthdays, I think those are, at least within the last 50 years, pretty accurate. But I'm thinking mostly, battles. When I mean, here's an example. When I was in a mass, sadly enough, a mass shooting when I was living in Mexico, and it was crazy. So all the chaos happened, right? A guy went to a nightclub. I think he killed 4 and hurt like 20. I was right outside the nightclub, and as soon as the gunshots went off, I turned, thought it was like balloons popping or something, and saw a wave of people running at me. So I turned and ran, fell, cut myself, all sorts of stuff. But then called my parents. I was like, "Hey, just so you know, everything's okay. Like everyone made it back to the house safe and sound." And it was widely entertaining. Like even the next day, seeing CNBC and CNN and ABC and all the American mainstream media, they like copy pasted the same article, and it was so far off and so wrong. And we were all reading it like, who the hell wrote this, and who the hell approved it? And then everyone else just copy pasted it. The only American media that got it right was what's the Billboard magazine, the music magazine. It was a music fest, so they must have had a good reporter down there. And there was interviews with people around the world. Billboard magazine had it down. They know exactly what happened. They had their facts, as far as I know, correct. And I called them and emailed them and let them know. I was like, "Hey, I'm reading everything, and I don't know who the hell wrote this story, but it's completely false." And we did a bunch of interviews for Mexican media. They had reporters out there and whatnot. So it was just very reaffirming in the fact that I don't know if there really is a history. And so that boiled our conversation down to our personal history, which is something you can control. And even then, obviously, you have your personal biases. And so, you don't necessarily, it's not necessarily fact either, but you can control it. You can write your story. You can write your book. You can go on social. You can do exactly what I'm doing now and document some things. On this day, I said these things. At least that'll be a fact. It'll be recorded with this video. I can see that it's cloudy. So we have the date and the time and cloudy. So those are some facts we can do. But, it's super interesting. But I encourage you to watch the episode. It turned out to be very, very enlightening. We had some awesome guests, and it was fun to see people's take on the topic of history and how to improve your intellectual health. Whew. Have a good one. Hope today is your